Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today is the first day of spring, and I have a very short poem. All heaven and earth, flowered white obliterate, snow, unceasing snow, which of course is in the prediction for this evening, and that was from Matsu Basho, a Japanese poet. So I'll introduce everyone. I'm Anna Marie Pavlik-Rosen. We have Kathy Poe helping us with minutes today. Walt Baldwin was vacated from his seat, but a court judgment this afternoon has reinstated him. A motion of temporary restraining order. I think maybe I've garbled that. James, would you like to explain that? Can you please?
No, you said that correctly. Judge Wingate issued a temporary restraining order 4 p.m. today, and a copy was delivered to my office as attorney for the board. It enters a temporary restraining order and says that the court precludes the removal of board member Baldwin until after the time in which parties may be heard regarding injunctive relief. The board member may participate at the upcoming meeting of the Frankfort Plant Board.
Thank you, James. Don Hill, our Secretary-Treasurer, Ralph Ludwig, our member, our new member, Stephen Mason, and of course, Board Attorney James Liebman. Walt mentioned that he will be here shortly. He has just had to pull together a few things, so please note in the minutes when he writes, Kathy. Thank you. Our first order of business is to hear a little bit from our new board member, Stephen Mason. If you'd like to say something about yourself, what you're looking forward to on the board.
Well, again, I'm Steve Mason. I was born in Frankfort. I was educated in Frankfort, and I still live in Frankfort. I have 2 kids that grew up in Frankfort, so I'm pretty familiar with Frankfort as it in general. And I guess my biggest thing that I'd like to convey to the board and to the management, to staff, is that I want to be respectful, and I want to do what's right for the ratepayers. And those are my priorities. I don't want to go beyond those 2 rules as I guess deliberate on whatever we are talking about here today and in the future. So.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. So our first order of business is consider approving the meeting minutes from January 16th regular board meeting and also February 20th regular board meetings, and to also talk and accept the minutes committee meeting, and also talk about some proposed guidelines for minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'll mention just a technicality, but on the January 16 minutes, I think in the list of attendees, they had accidentally omitted my name.
Oh, my.
I was there, and Cindy has noticed that, so.
Okay, I missed it. Okay, good, thank you. I should have looked at it more carefully. Don, did you have any comments on the minutes?
No. Did you? There was one thing, and I forget the item where the second was left out, but I think that was fixed. Yeah. So,
Okay,
no.
so that's been modified? Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for January, February, and the minutes committee meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Good. And I would just interject that the committee minutes are accepted versus approved. Just a technicality there, but I should cover that. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I voted aye, too. And now, if we can talk for a minute about the proposed meeting guidelines. I sent those by email this afternoon. We also have a paper copy. Does anyone have a comment on those or opinion? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt these minute guidelines?
Let me make a, I like what you have here, and it may do that. I'm used to having minutes that pretty much give the first and foremost, it gives the mechanics of the meeting, the motions, obviously the resolution of the action, and then the resolution of the action, and then some significant information that rises in the meeting, perhaps to have some kind of more detail in it. I think this does that. But I'd be interested in if there's any other problems with it. I'm not sure what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've never had guidelines, just kind of unspoken comments or ideas about meeting minutes and what they should include. The KRS has the very limited that you should have the motion and how people voted. And we've always had a little bit more the discussion and what thoughts were. And came to the conclusion by having a committee meet on and discuss what guidelines might be, that we'd try that, and applied these for the minutes for January and February. So it's just a matter of do we want to adopt these or not?
I guess my question, can this be done at the discretion of the chair? I mean, I'm not sure if you want to tie yourself one way or the other, but if that is the discretion of the board or the chair, I'm not sure where it wants a
Okay, well, as far as I know, we don't have any specific guidelines on that, but what I'd propose is we try this out for 3 months and see how we like it, and they can always be modified, changed, or reconsidered.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so does anyone want to make a motion? Or I can make the motion. I move that we adopt these guidelines and apply them for the next 3 months and discuss it again. So that would be in the July meeting, we would discuss what we think. Is there a second? Okay. Nope. We could go ahead on to the next item then. Okay. All right, accept the electric, water, and cable financials. So this would be Katrina Cummins.
Good evening. The financial statements start on page 31 of your board package. And while you're turning, just for informational purposes, we are having our kickoff meeting this Friday with our auditors for the 17-18 audit. So it just keeps going, you know. And then our preliminary audit work is scheduled for the week of May 14th. So we're already going on that. So if you're on page 31, that's the statement of net position. Line 60 shows our total assets of $175,733,000. Line 115 shows total liabilities of $88 million, a little over $88 million. Line 150, our total net position is $87.5 million. And on 155, our total liabilities and net position of $175 million. The next page, 32, is our cash and investment schedule. This is required as part of our investment policy. Just is a breakdown of our restricted cash versus our unrestricted cash and our restricted and unrestricted investments. Line 50 shows our restricted cash as of February 28th of $900,000. Line 95 shows unrestricted cash of $23.5 million. And line 100 shows total restricted and unrestricted cash of $24.5 million. The second section is the investment section. So line 135 shows total restricted investments of $9.3 million. Line 145 shows unrestricted investments of $118,000. And line 150 shows total restricted and unrestricted investments of almost $9.5 million. The next page is just a summary of our bonds, leases, and loans payable. There were no principal payments in February, so it really hasn't changed. We do have some principal payments due in March, but it's pretty essentially the same as it was last month. So total debt as of February 28th is $43.5 million. Line 34 is our statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. I'm going to look at the year-to-date column, which is the third column of numbers over. Line 20 shows the total operating revenues for all three divisions of almost $69 million. Line 50 is the total operating expenses for all three divisions of almost $49 million. And then line 55, if you net the two, shows the gross contribution of just over $20 million. Right in line with budget at that point. We're just $84,000 different year-to-date in budget. You skip on down to line 140, that's our G&A section, which is all the other departments, support, admin departments. It's just under $15 million year-to-date for total expenses. Line 190 shows other revenue for the company-wide of just over $2 million. And you net all that together at the bottom for their net contribution is 7.3, almost 7.4 million. Page 35 is that same data, just sliced and diced a little bit differently. It's just a little bit more detail. And then pages 36 through 49, it shows the detail of all the departments and divisions that make up the totals on the summary pages. So if you'll skip over to page 50, that's our cash activity summary. This is just a summary of all of our bank accounts. Shows all of summary level receipts and disbursements. And then pages 53 show the detail of those disbursements that were made electronically. And pages 54 through 88 shows the detail of the disbursements that were paid through our regular accounts payable check run. And then the last two pages, 89 and 90, show the detail of the disbursements made through our Impress checking account. Any questions?
Looks good. Do we have a motion to accept the financials?
I move that we accept the financials.
I'll second.
I think the staff, all of the staff, does an admirable job of budgeting every year. David.
Yes. I think we didn't vote all in favor of accepting.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Public comment. Do we have any public comment for this evening? Okay. Great. If you can state your name and if you're a plant board customer.
My name is David Hecker. I am a plant board customer. I have electricity, telephone, internet, and cable. I live in the county. I work in the city. First, I'd like to commend the staff on the superb job they did on covering the tower implosion. I was down there live watching it with my wife, but I was also had my Facebook Live up and watched Kathy, Clint, and the rest of them on there. So great job. And I do plan on purchasing a copy of the DVD. I don't know if you have to pre-order those like the other, if you just have some already done up. I'm not sure, but I will be contacting you to get one of those. Again, great job. I went home and watched it again, the whole thing. But I'm here tonight. Luckily, I made it. They canceled the softball game, so I was able to make it. I don't know why. It's perfect weather out there. But John would have showed up. He likes softball. But I do want to just make my support known for action item 15, and that's the SEPA entitlement. I've followed along. I think I was here back in January, I think, and spoke on it. And I know there are some questions, but I think that the KYMEA has done they have responded, and I feel very confident between them and the staff that you all have. I think it is a great opportunity for you all to make, I think it was 800-some thousand, I think, on a program that's losing money now every month. I know that over the life of it, it's quite beneficial, but here lately it's been running in the red. So I think this is a great opportunity between that and KYMEA in general. You all are local staff. You see the people out in the community, and I think it's really something special that we have here. It's not everywhere that you can go, and ratepayers are able to address their electric provider and cable provider. So I think that is something very nice that we have here as a Frankfort community. So I want to thank you all for that again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, my name is John Sauer. I am a plant board customer. I live at 112 Wilkinson Street, and I'm just here to support my friend and others for your support and favorable consideration of the SEPA entitlement. And I'll give you some reasons why. There were 1,011 customers that received third-party payment assistance, charities that helped people with their utilities during 2016 and 2017. There were 4,664 customers during that one-year period who had their services cut off. This, like other things, is an opportunity to save the FPD money, and therefore the customers involved. If we don't take advantage of the savings offered to us by SEPA and KYMEA, these numbers will grow. So I, again, encourage your favorable consideration for SEPA. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm Delvin Asofefa. I am a Frankfort Plant Board customer. What I wanted to try to find out, if you guys have any answers for me, currently my internet that I purchased is at 50 megabits per second, but when I run this app, usually it has about 10, maybe 15, and I'm wondering, is it a problem with my app or is it a problem with the service? Because especially on Sunday when I'm trying to watch my Walking Dead, it buffers too much. I like my Walking Dead, okay? And I would just like to know if you fine folks have an answer for me, and that would be awesome if you guys could help me out with that. Thank you.
Sure. Adam, is that something that you could address? Is that?
That's what we do. We get your information. If we can get your information, we can send somebody out and take a look and see if the problem's with the equipment or something outside the house or in the plant. But we'd be more than glad to come out and check it out for you.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. So, any other customer public comment? Okay. Not. We'll go on to departmental reports. Website customer comments. I read those over. Did any of the board members notice anything special about the website customer comments that they want to cover? I had the question about one person was frustrated with internet always down. Was that something we followed up on?
Yes, we set up a time to meet with the customer, and basically the last time we had anything from the customer was 2014. So we had no trouble call on record. We met with the customer and basically explained to them that they would subscribe to 10 meg. They were doing a lot of streaming, so it would be beneficial for them to go to 25. We upgraded the customer, and as far as I know, the customer is satisfied at this point.
Okay, that's good. And water main cover. This person went into a lot of detail about a problem with the cover on a water main. I'm not really sure if that's sewer or city or the plant board. I assume there was some kind of follow-up on this?
Yep. There was follow-up on this, and my understanding is that the situation's been resolved. So.
Good, thank you. Okay. We'll go on to the cable department report.
Yes, ma'am. The cable department report starts on page 93 of your board packet. Mr. Mason, anytime if you have a question, just feel free to stop me. I know it's the first time you're seeing some of this stuff. Basically, the first page is our trouble call. We have at the bottom basically the resolutions for each type of trouble call. This year, trouble call is down. It's kind of been the average all year. The trouble call is down versus 17. We had a couple areas that were up were actually set-top boxes and DTA, which is basically cable boxes in the house. The other area was raise and lower transmit, and that has a lot to do with the outside plant equipment having issues and it being corrected at the customer's house. The second page of the report is basically our customer penetrations for the month. And basically this looks at each line of, not really line of business, but service offered by the cable department. So we have basically our classic cable lineup, our preferred, which is basically on advanced set-top box, broadband, which is cable modem, local phone, security, and VOD. Basically, we're up in most categories. We're a little low on broadband this month, which, going back and looking, I think our budget projections were a little bit off. I don't think we're actually losing customers. I just don't think we're meeting our projections. Any question on those two pages?
Yeah, I have a question on, you mentioned the set-top box, that there seem to be more problems this month.
Yeah, I don't have any particular reason why.
So it's just a fluctuation?
The only thing that comes to mind is we offer TiVo product now, which is going to be, we're learning as we put them in. Well, we know how to put them in, but the customer's learning how to use them, and that might be part of it.
Okay.
Because that does fall under advanced set-top box. The DTAs, of course, they're getting up in age, and so we are seeing a replacement of all of those.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
The last page of the report is basically the outage report. And the outage report is anything that, where we had multiple customers off. It's not individual trouble calls, it's large numbers of customers. And basically this month, it looks like we had 3 outages. One was a noise problem actually caused by a customer's equipment. One is a power supply failure, which runs the actives in the field. And the last one there was a tree that was fell down in the Tanglewood subdivision.
Okay. So, on the noise thing, that was magnetic interference?
Yes, basically. We have those from time to time that they can actually cause that much damage. In the past, we've had things like customers have a welder in their garage, and there's actually something wrong, and when they fire the welder up to weld a piece of metal, it's causing so much noise that it's getting back into their cable in their house, causing a problem in the system. And so some of those take a little while to track down, especially if it's something that the customer uses every now and then, or we've had refrigerators, different things like that over the years that cause the problem in the cable system.
Okay, good.
Any question I'll try to answer?
Any other questions for Adam? Okay. Was that everything you had? Along the line of the cable department, the Frankfort Independent School District program, any update on that?
We have 3 hotspots that were in the agreement with them, and those are up and functioning well. I spoke to Dr. Barber just yesterday. Very pleased with that, and we are working to, as soon as we get information from customers that are eligible, the parent or guardian of the student, we're having them come in the office and getting them scheduled to be set up. So it's moving forward.
Do you have an approximate number on how many have set up at this point?
I know that For sure, the ones that have come in and we have boxes, there are 6 customers that I know of that have gotten signed up. As soon as they come in, we put them into our service order system, and they are put in just like anybody else.
Okay.
So we encourage anyone that's eligible to come in, and we'll get you set up. And Dr. Barber's aware of the situation as well, and he's going to continue to inform people that are eligible about the program, and I'm sure it'll start taking off here soon.
About how many more do we anticipate, like 50 or 100 or?
We had around 50 that were eligible.
Okay, good.
And I think the Chromebooks have been delivered to the students, at least in the high school, so I think it'll ramp up here pretty soon.
Okay, sounds good. The electrical department. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped over customer service. Oh,
Good evening, everyone. We can skip customer service. It always makes me nervous. But anyway, we had customer service assisted 6,682 customers in February. That was over the phone and in the office. Our reports for you to see that information are on pages 98 through 100 in your board packet. And just something I wanted to point out in the meeting, since some people do watch these, is that our budget billing signups for our residential customers, with the new cycle change we implemented last year in the spring, signups will start for them on April the 12th of this year. So more information is going to come on that, and we're going to allow signups on the portal as well this year, which is new, and that will go out to them on their statements they receive in April.
Perhaps you could explain a little bit about what the budget program is.
Yes, ma'am. We offer budget billing to our residential customers. What that does is take a 24-month average, if it's available for their location, for the utility services only, the electric and water consumption, and it averages that out for them so that they pay the same amount for those services each month. And then any telecom services they have on that same bill are at actual cost each month. So it allows them to have a set amount as long as they don't make changes to their services, or have things that fluctuate, such as long-distance calls or pay-per-view events that they might order. As long as they don't have anything like that, they pay the same amount each month on their bill for a year.
Roughly what percentage of our customers are on that, like 10% or just?
I don't have that information. I don't know if Brian does or not. I don't honestly know that information, but I could get it for you if you're interested in it.
I'd just be curious if it, how many people take advantage of it.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? Thank you all.
One thing, Ms. Rosen, we talked about updating during this section was kind of give a little update to the board on the $5 promotional credit for paper billing. It was back in November, the board approved that anyone who signed up for paper billing will get a one-time $5 credit per customer, regardless of the number of accounts the customer has. So looking at November through this last Friday, we've had 1,507 people sign up since November. I was just sitting here thinking what the total number of paperless, and I did not grab that, but we've had 1,500 people take us up on that offer, and of course every time that we go paperless, that's approximately 60 cents per mailing that we don't have to make. So that's moving in the right direction.
Multiply it out, it's, I think, $250,000 a year savings.
It takes about 8 months to pay back for the $5 credit, but yeah, it's $250,000 a year we spend on paper and postage and all that good stuff. So anything we can do to reduce that amount is a good thing, and the customers get them much more quickly than having to wait in the mail. They usually go out the day that we release the bills. So
Okay.
just a little update for you.
Thank you. So the electrical department?
Yes, as you turn to page 101, I will just give a kind of brief definition of some of the acronyms so Mr. Mason may understand what we're talking about a little bit. On page 101 is our SAIDI number. That stands for System Average Interruption Duration Index. And that's one of our reliability numbers we have to apply by. And what that's doing is telling you take the number of customers, the length of all the outages, and that's the number. So the average customer is out.
You can save your time. I'm too old to remember retain all of that.
So, but anyway, just to let you know, so SAIDI's that. As you turn to page 102, you're going to see our pie chart, and that gives you percentages for all the cause of outages. Page 103 That gives you the actual count for each category, and it gives you the total number of outages, which were 17 for the month of March, so February. And then the last page, 104, is going to give your top 10 outages for the month of February, and you'll notice that out of those 10, 5 of them are on the same date as from that little storm we had come through about 11 o'clock that night, wind. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. So, safety?
There were no OSHA recordables or vehicle accidents. We did complete CPR and first aid training, so about 150 employees were trained this year. That's something that we're proud of because we think it not only makes the plant board a safer place to work, but our community, with so many people being trained, it's a safer place to work and live and play. So we thank the board for their support on funding that training every year.
Thank you. So, water distribution?
Mrs. Chairman, members of the board, water distribution reports on page 111 through 113. There was actually one page that was duplicated there for outages. It should have been new services. There were 8 new services, 5 outages, and 2 main breaks. Some of those outages were scheduled tie-ins, so they weren't necessarily main breaks.
And the main breaks, were those weather-related, or is that just?
2 of them were, the 2 main breaks were smaller lines that we actually had corrosion and small leaks on the line. The other outages were all, one was a tie-in, one was a fire system outage, and the other one was a contractor that actually hit a line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, water treatment plant.
Hi, good evening. For Mr. Mason's benefit, I'm Julie Roney. I am the superintendent out at the water treatment plant. And my report primarily focuses on water production and our source of supply. So for the month of February, we continued our trend of slightly increased production over past years. We treated 231.5 million gallons of water. I'm sorry, I've got a little something going on in my head here. We averaged 8.3 million gallons of water a day, so we were still well above that 8 million mark. We had almost a record amount of rain for the month of February. We almost hit 10 inches. We had 9.5 inches of rain recorded at the water treatment plant. So if you remember what the river looked like in February, we take that every day and make the water that comes out of your tap. And I'm very proud of my staff that has the ability to do that type of treatment, that chemistry and that biology and that mechanical and electrical ability to do that kind of work. Because we had all that rain, we had a very high flow in the river. The river being the Lock 4, the pool behind Lock 4 as our source of supply. 31,000 cubic feet per second, 20 billion gallons of water a day were flowing past our intake on an average. So that's what 9 inches of rain can do to the river. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Sounds good.
And Mr. Mason, any time you want to come out and take a tour, just come on out.
I'll be out.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Okay. One thing we went over from where we started was SEPA and KyMEA in the departmental reports. And I think it would be good to do that now. And then David and I had talked about moving items 13 through 17 to follow next after discussing SEPA and KYMEA. So if the board member agrees that we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so do we want to start with a SEPA update?
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Board, the latest SEPA information we have is for the month of January. We actually cleared just short of $40,000 with SEPA, so that's a good surprise from normal. On page 105, you see the trend data, and 106. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see the average market price for SEPA. It was significantly higher in January, so that is the main reason for the being in the black this month. If you look on page 107, you see the 20-year averages and totals of that we have for SEPA. Again, the total SEPA over those 20 years has been about $10 million of benefit to the Frankfort Plant Board. But the last few years, as was mentioned before, we have been in the red. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have on that.
Okay. Sounds good. The next area that I thought we'd discuss are guidelines for our representative to KYMEA. And I put out some proposed ideas on that. We have on a sheet. And have you had a chance to take a look at those suggestions and have anything to add? Yes, Steve.
You have a sentence in the first paragraph that I really don't think you need, that vote and call for a weighted vote is needed. That's redundant. That's really in the first sentence. You say advocate for board directors in the meetings that informally with other KYMEA board representatives and alternatives. That covers everything.
Well, I guess I wanted to work in taking a proactive step there and calling for a weighted vote. And by advocate, I guess I was thinking more of discussing things that the Frankfort Plant Board is interested in and advocating a particular position in discussion.
I mean, when you're making, to me, at least in my opinion, when you're making a policy, or if you're making a motion, it should be generic. It should not be specific to a situation. You draft it to cover all the situations so that you might not miss one that you really wanted to get. So, I mean, by prioritizing one of them, you might diminish the your argument against something that was not done, and you said it should have been covered in the other. So a general statement that covers everything is better than something that's trying to be specific to a particular issue.
So you would eliminate the third sentence on the first paragraph.
I would eliminate the last sentence in the first paragraph.
Okay.
I think it's a bit much to write a report on explaining all the discussions and motions. If it's videoed, we can watch it for ourselves.
But it is not currently.
I just think it's difficult for a member to be there and participate in the meeting and to be able to take, I mean, the motions are going to be in the minutes.
And that's all that's in the minutes. We don't have a sense of what the discussion is, and there is no taping, or hasn't been.
I don't know, I just think that is difficult to come back with a detailed report explaining discussion, et cetera. I mean, I think...
Well, how do we as board members find out what actually happened without being there?
Well, I think that when the representative comes back and gives us a general overview, I think that lets us know what happens.
So how would you word that.
Off the top, I'm brain dead right now. I can't, I mean, we just got this, and so, I'm not sure. How would you word it?
I think I'd table this to at least one more meeting for further thought among the board members.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because when we're just handed something at the meeting and haven't had a chance to really,
I did send it out by email around 1 o'clock.
well, that's still not much time.
I realize it's not a huge amount of time, but it wasn't just at the
Okay.
meeting. So.
I agree with Ralph. I'd like to be able to have it brought up again next month and discussed then.
Okay.
I would certainly support, the written report. I like, memorializing, what happened, and more than that, having some discussion of the pros and cons of what's being discussed, I think is important for us to understand that the direction of the agency, and also for us to provide direction to our representative for the agency. And then along the vote and the call for a weighted vote, I guess I'm a little confused by that. Was that thought more, I guess what was your thought behind that? Was it about the fact that so many things seem to be from consensus and not from a vote, and to push it more towards vote, or what were your thoughts around why you included that?
I think that was part of it. How to say, to actually have votes on more issues than just consensus, because by voting, people would actually declare that they agree with that motion, versus a vaguer idea of consensus is not very precise. Steve, you have a lot of legislative experience. How would you, if we want to say take an active role, how would you put that in there?
Well, again, to me, to Walt, and Walt, good to meet you. I think the cleaner the sentence is, the more, in a sense, generic, the more you've covered everything. When you start putting things into specific items, then you may negate your argument to something that happened, that now you want to point to the directive, and say, we told you to do this, or we said this. To the other point with Ralph and Don, in everything I've been in, there's always been a report from the representative back to the body, to the organization. Simply, it doesn't have to be a 10-page report. It can be, one page that says, here are the things that's happened, here were the issues, here were, if you can put on that kind of the directions of the positions of the different municipals. It doesn't have to be long. It just can be summarized, but it also, as you use the word, memorializes the situation or the event, and it's there for us to look back on in the future. So I don't have a real issue with that, because it sort of formalizes also things we do.
Well, I think you made some good points there, and I also think once the person was representing us and certain discussions kind of come up again, it wouldn't be as much of an effort after the first time to say, and we also expanded on this. And, it wouldn't be starting from scratch. Okay. So we had one suggestion to table until April. Does anyone want to make a motion along any line, or?
I just move that that the board members continue to consider this subject, and then we can talk about it some more at the next board meeting, because it is a very important subject. It's how our reps to KyMEA are going to communicate to the board members about what happened.
Right.
So,
Well, I think some of this goes back to the formative time period between the power meeting in 2015 and signing the KyMEA All Requirements contract in 2016 that we heard nothing really about the formation and how it was going.
One of the things that I said earlier, and maybe I need to expound for me on it, is I'm coming to this board looking at it as an organization outside of whatever has happened or whatever may happen in the future. So when I can't look through these different decisions through a rose color, a filter glass based on what might have happened in the past or what may happen in the future, because I'm trying to look at it purely from what is technically good for a board and the organization under the board, not with what circumstances may or may not have happened going forward. So it's hard to do that, try to adjust for something that may have happened in the past or whatever. We need to do what is technically right, as if nothing in the past has happened.
Okay. Good, well put.
So I guess it strikes me, we need to, move forward on trying to get a representative and having some kind of guidelines for, what their expectations are would be good for us. And also, it sounds like we've got, fair agreement on what's here with the exception, and I don't really have a particular issue with the vote discussion.
We can take that out.
And the other point I would make is that, none of this is in stone. If we have other thoughts or, as things move down the road, we can certainly, adjust as we go.
I think those are good points. I think, not to mention the past, but we had expectations that maybe fell short, and so to give some kind of guidance as to what we're looking for would be a positive step, not even considering the past.
Am I correct that I've got a motion out there? I don't know if we had a second.
Oh, I didn't realize you made it as motion, but yes.
My motion was really for the board members to continue to think and consideration about this subject, and then in the, I guess it'd be the April meeting, we can take up the subject again.
Okay.
See what suggestions we got at that
Good.
point.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Me. 2 opposed, 3 ayes. Steve, are you an aye? Or
Let me explain I'm going to explain my vote. I'm going to vote with Ralph and Don simply because I want to try recognizing that what I said, I truly believe. But I'm going to try to go along with them so we can come back in April and do this, because it's something that needs to be done.
Okay. So the motion passed 3-2. I think you got all of it. Good, thank you. Our next order of business is to hear from KyMEA, from Doug Bresch, who's here, to update us on what has been going on with KyMEA.
Okay, well, probably without a PowerPoint, so Okay, Madam Chair, members of the board, thanks for having me here. Again, I'm Doug Bresch. I'm the president and CEO of KyMEA, and here to give an update on some of the goings-on over the last few months of at our meetings. You've seen this before, but it's the same timeline that I'm following, and what really changes on this is it ticks from 14 months, 13, and so forth. We have a delivery date of May 1 of 2019. We need to get a lot of things in order yet. So I want to give an update of where we're at and some of the near-term activities. So the things you've seen on here, as you see us tick through the months, I'm going to focus on those first few items that are bullet pointed here and kind of show you where we're at. The near-term activities for me have been member visits. So I've been to 8 of the 11 members so far, and I've enjoyed it a lot. A lot of meeting of the councils and mayors and boards and staffs, and it's been terrific. 3 more to go. We'll get those done by the end of April. There's always a conflict of trying to get a board meeting on one end of the state versus the other, so we're trying to balance out the timing of those. Staffing-wise, hired an office manager. She started yesterday, and so she's up and running already. 2 more staffing issues I have by June 1. That'll be a CFO and a vice president of the power markets. So this is our market operations group. So these are two things we need to get in place and have well-oiled and running by the time we're ready to go operational. Also, I've been working on a lot of policies. The policies would have to do around the things any organization would have, travel policy and those types of things for the employees. So trying to get those in place along the way. And I'll have those for the board's consideration at our upcoming meeting on Thursday. One of the big tasks that I've been working on is what we call an energy services partner. And so I'm going to try to explain what that is and through a few graphs as well. Hopefully I don't make it more confusing than it is, because it's kind of a tricky thing to understand. And that is, we need to have someone that looks after our 24-hour operation. So instead of hiring staff to do that, we think it's going to be cost effective, at least in the early stages of our organization, to hire an organization that does that professionally. And there's a number out there. They've been doing it for a lot of years, and they're quite good at it. But they would be a staff extension, if you want to think of it that way, for a 24-hour operation. The advantages is economies of scale. So a number of other organizations already have started these and they use them. And so we could just kind of use their staff as well, so that keeps the cost down because they can share it. Saves on our staffing needs. I would need a minimum 5 staff members to man the 24-hour operation, and then maybe perhaps a couple others to help with the settlements. So that's 5 to 7 people. Also saves on resources, so we can share software, hardware issues, the settlement software where you have to go out and each month work with something like MISO, the Midwest or Mid-Continent Independent System Operator to balance out the books, so to speak. So they have that kind of software already. So that's what we would need for this energy services partner. And I use the word partner because the ones I've talked to, and they're all on board with this, is we're not going to just hand it off to them. There's a daily call that takes place with that organization to map out a strategy and how we're going to optimize our assets and minimize our risk. So that's what we're looking at there. To give you an understanding of that, it goes back to your Economics 101, upper left-hand corner. In the power industry, supply has to equal demand, and there's an equilibrium point. So if you look at and I have a senior in high school going through economics, so we're studying this all the time now. The demand curve, it's a supply curve, that equilibrium point is where price and quantity meet. In our case, when we look at price and quantity, it could be the point where we have excess demand or supply over our demand, and we'll be able to sell that into the market. We might have supply that's more expensive than the market, and we'll back that supply down and buy from the market. But we're always meeting our members' demand, and that's the red lines that we look at here, and it's the red on the chart. So if you look at all of our members, those lines that go out to each of our 8 all requirements members, the green lines coming in, that's from our power resources, the Dynegy coal, the Paducah peakers, the Big Rivers coal, Paris diesels, the SEPA hydro, all the things we've talked about. And you'll notice one other line that goes up into MISO. That's how we balance this out. So if we're always going to have supply and demand out of balance somewhat because of the market price, we'll use MISO as that conduit to balance it out. Very effective. We think it'll be worth several $1 million more to the agency, not just in what the cost you're getting, that'll go towards working capital. So we think we have extremely good contracts as opposed to the market, and we can take advantage of those. So that's kind of the mechanics of how all this works, but we need a 24-hour operations to keep track of that. A second visual that's always good to look at is, let's say we looked at a single day. So we're looking at hour 1 in the morning out to hour 24. This blue line represents the load shape. So this is a peak day load, and each hour, and in fact, each 4-second interval within those hours, we're constantly getting a reading from our SCADA system of what the supply and demand is, and we're trying to balance that. If we don't balance it properly, we have pretty big penalties we have to pay to KU because we're on their transmission system. So each supply and demand balance, as you go around the clock, we're looking to that slice of time, and we're trying to match those two out. So that's how we'll work with our energy service provider to take care of that activity. It may be that sometime or other we'll bring that all in-house and we'll hire staff to do that if it's more cost-effective. But this is the direction we're going forward with, and it's used by a lot of different agencies like ours, and that's kind of the direction they go. Okay. That's where I'm at in the near-term activities. I did want to give another update as well on power supply activities. You've seen this a number of times, so you'll notice these graphs. But the board authorized the agency to move forward with 2 types of new resources about a year ago. And the objectives there were, let's look at portfolio theory, different types and timings of resources. Frankfort was a big part of that, saying, well, we wanted to look at different fuel diversity, solar or other renewables. Solar is kind of the one that works around here, and also a natural gas combined cycle resource. So that's the direction we move forward with. And also the board said we want to worry, we worried about the mitigation of possible future carbon legislation. So that was part of that objective as well. So to give you an idea of the timing of all this, I know it's been stated before that we're coal heavy. We're really not coal heavy after 3 years of operation. If you look at this big hole that we have to fill, we have the Dynegy coal contract drops off after 3 years, and we have to do something to fill that gap. So that's why we're looking at it now. It takes quite a while to get these portfolios in place and contracts in place. So the portfolio that we're looking at now is to fill this gap. And if I move it forward, we're filling that gap in our contract negotiations with this natural gas combined cycle, that green area, and also we're looking at the yellow area, which is solar. So that fills us up to the peak plus reserves that we need to meet for our customers' needs, our members' needs. So that's kind of how the portfolio is coming together. Those negotiations are progressing well, but there's, as anything, it takes a lot of back and forth with the various providers to get the best deal and the best terms. So if you, a summary, if we're nearing completion with the negotiations and preparation and participation of this combined cycle and solar facilities, 2 different facilities, and we expect to have these PPAs signed and ready to go for our 2022 delivery date by this summer. And so that's kind of the summary, and I want to get you guys up to speed. I know you haven't had representation as you just discussed, and but we're happy to come around and kind of give a flavor for where we're at and a feel for where we're at right now. So any questions or comments?
Yep, I have a question.
Sure.
The 24-hour coverage we're starting, that wouldn't, or talking about, wouldn't actually start until May 1st of 2019?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes. At midnight, May 1st.
Okay, and, well, it'd be daylight savings time, too. Let's see. Oh, what is the name of the office manager you hired?
Oh, Michelle Hickson.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? It's not.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, well, I thought of one other question. What are the major questions, discussion, things that'll be happening in the meeting on Thursday?
This Thursday, well, we'll give an update on these the natural gas combined cycle and the renewables. That'll be in closed session, of course, because
Sure.
It's still confidential, non-disclosure. I gave you pretty much the rest of the presentation of what I'm going to give. So it's always, from my perspective, it's the activities that I've just been working on. So what I've been doing the last month, what I'm doing upcoming, and that's these near-term activities that I laid out.
Okay.
So getting all those things in place. The jobs, the 2 jobs that I mentioned are posted right now for the CFO and the Vice President of Market Operations. So we'll be moving forward with those as well. So I'll give a board an update on those.
Good, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So I had proposed moving up the sections 13 through 17, and the next one is consider accepting the Reed-Smith report regarding Kentucky Municipal Energy Agency. Back in the January meeting, Ralph made a motion that once we received or accept that report, that we'd pay the $50,000 that we owe. And it certainly would be good for us to pay that. We have received a couple other bills recently. I would suggest that we make a motion to accept the report.
I move we accept the Reed Smith report.
Okay. All in favor?
Need a second first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So we have a motion by Walt. Do we have a second?
I have some discussion.
Okay, well, I'll second it, and then we can have a discussion. Okay?
I know it's a technicality, but I would like to change the wording of, rather than accepting the Reed Smith report, that we receive the Reed Smith report.
Well, I believe to pay them, we have to accept it. Would that be correct, David?
No, it's, you can receive it, and then accepting it, I think it's just a matter of definitions of, I think accepting it would be receiving it in addition to accepting the contents, and receive would be just to, we physically have it. But whatever the board, whatever you decide to do, accept it, receive it, we can go ahead and pay the bill.
Thank you for clarifying.
And we'll pay the $50,000 that we've been authorized to pay.
Great.
I think you submitted a preliminary report, and then we had our meeting, and as Anna Marie said, the board voted to pay the $50,000 max to him upon receipt of the final report. So my understanding is that he submitted a final report at this point. Is that right?
So what about the extra $5,000 that they have submitted?
That should not be paid. We were very clear from day one that $50,000 was the limit. At least that's my recommendation to the board.
Right, and I looked for an email to confirm that, and I couldn't find one. I think maybe it was just presented in the meeting that you had spoken with them.
Well, there's a clear understanding that that was the limit of the contract.
Okay. Yes?
Just for my information, as a matter of practice, how do purchases, personal service contracts, how does Frankfort Plant Board handle contracts, purchases, obligations?
Well, I guess going back as far as...
In other words, there's a contract in here, I think, whatever.
For energy efficiency.
So how was that handled?
We had an RFP process, so we went out for requests for proposals. We selected one by going through a systematic approach.
Okay, so once, who handled that?
Well, for the energy efficiency, it was handled through the electrical
Okay,
department.
so let's assume one that has been processed, cleared, approved, and now ready for action, the contract has been engaged. Who watches the payments? Who monitors the payments? Who keeps up with those things?
Well, ultimately, the cost accounting department.
Yeah, we have a FPB procurement policy, and we follow the policy on a day-to-day basis, and that policy is primarily throughout the staff, from approval in the budget to having the either department or division manager approving a purchase. We have a purchasing department.
Who watches the expenses and making sure that the contract stays within budget?
Each department, each division takes responsibility for their own budget. So we send out financial statements monthly, and each of the department managers is also watching their expenditures. So they're aware, they get the invoices and are aware and are watching, and also the accounting department is also watching as well.
So who is ultimately responsible for making sure a contract doesn't go over?
The project manager is typically the one that's watching and paying attention.
Perhaps the accounting department?
Accounting department is watching for approvals as they come through. There's typically 2 to 3 approvals on an invoice at any given time. Let's just say the energy efficiency one, for example. The electric division has been primarily watching or walking through that process. And as we get invoices in, they're approved from the same department that is driving the project. So they're being watched, and responsibilities with that department or project manager. and accounting will pay them as they're approved.
Okay, let me
But we
ask
will
you-
bring people, say, hey, you're approaching a limit, and if we see an issue.
What if someone is at the limit and going over? Who is responsible for stopping that from happening?
That is followed by the procurement policy again.
But what position in the organization does that?
There are different spending levels. If you have for $5,000 and below, it can be approved by a department
No,
manager.
I'm talking about that we have a contract for $40,000, and I work for the plan board. I'm doing it. I'm at 39.9, and I still have 4 months to go on the contract. Who is making sure that I stay up under the 40,000?
Typically, it's the project manager of the staff of the plant board.
But the project manager is over that project.
Correct.
So he or she has a vested interest in the project. Who above that person is making sure they stay under the $40,000 contract?
The assistant GM, the
Okay.
GM, and then the finance department as well is all watching to make sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the difference in this contract?
This was a board project, and it fell outside. The board decided to go around and not exactly adhere to the FPB procurement policy. The board approved the project and approved that Anna Marie and Walt would be the direct contacts. Mr. Liebman would assist. So this was outside of staff, so it was a little different situation.
So why do we as a board go around the checks and balances of cash management, project management, contract management?
Well, I think that is one interpretation. I don't feel that we went around a system. It was a board
Why was it not
project.
utilized, I guess is my question. Maybe I put it in the wrong.
It was a board project facilitated by the board with the board's attorney. So it was a little bit different than staff, but I think it was equivalent to how staff would have handled one of their own projects. This was a board project.
But there was no real oversight.
Well, all the bills still went to the finance department and still went through. The only real shift may have been that role of project manager. Other than that, it flowed
Well,
the same.
but that's why I was pressing David on who is ultimately responsible, because the project manager has a vested interest. I'm not saying he or she is going to go over it, but that is his or her project. So there must be someone above that person that makes sure that you don't go past the contract amount, and that is either the vice president or the general manager or the accounting department. And that's the control that I was asking about here, is that.
Well, our key contact with the law firm and with E3 was James Liebman. Would you agree, James?
Yes.
And so James was in charge of that for the specific project of professional services for the board.
And I believe as soon as the invoice came that got us close to that, James reached out to him and they agreed that yes, there was a $50,000 limit and that all those expenses would be underneath that cap.
Okay.
We're not going to pay them a penny, at least not by my recommendation, or unless the board votes to pay them a penny
Well,
more
again,
than the
We have that
contract.
in writing, and we also have that from your conversation
Yes.
at the end of the engagement.
So where we are now is we have a motion to accept the report. We have no motion to pay the additional invoice.
Well,
right?
my second question was, Bax, is this motion just to pay them? Is that what this was?
Yes.
Why don't we just say a motion to pay them? I pay them the $50,000.
We've already done that. We
Actually,
did
we
that in the
already did,
past.
Yes, we already
capped it at 50, said that when he submits his final report, we pay him 50, it's over.
So why is the motion then just to pay as opposed to accept or approve?
Well-
Because there are connotations to those words that may not.
I believe that David requested that the board approve that we accepted the report, or the report is here, that we received the goods, in order to match up with the motion that we already have that says pay them when we receive it.
Right.
So it's kind of a technicality, but we have received the report. We did agree we were paying them $50,000, so this is just to say, yes, send them the check.
All we do tonight is say, yes, we accept it, or no, we don't accept it. Tell me the report. That's the way I.
And again, I have a problem with the word accept.
Okay. Well,
Because accept connotates approve. And there are parts of the report that, for me personally, I don't approve of.
Well,
And
did you
so-
write in comments when we had the draft report, and then you could have added suggestions or comments or anything? Did you participate in that?
No, I did not, because the issues that I have with the report were not conducive to just a question. And so, I have no problem with voting on receiving the report. We have received it. But I have a problem voting to approve the report,
Well,
which is basically the same as accepting the
Okay.
report.
so any further discussion on that, and then we can take a vote.
So what's the wording of the
The motion,
I know you're parsing, accepting and
Well,
approving, but
the motion that we have is to say, by Walt, is to say that we accept the report. And we have a second. We had discussion. I think it's time to vote. Kathy, would you please call the vote?
Member Hale?
No.
Member Rosen?
Yes.
Member Mason?
Yes.
Member Ludwig?
yes.
Member Baldwin?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have accepted the report, and we can go ahead and pay Reed Smith. Okay, action item number 14. Consider approval of resolution adopting KyMEA Joint PURPA Implementation Plan and authorizing filing of the request with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission for approval to implement such plan. Now, I know, James, you spent some time looking over the PURPA contract. Did you have any comments that you wanted to add? I know you sent something out by email.
Nothing to add to the email that I sent to the board, just that the board directed me to review the proposed resolution as to legal issues, and I did not find anything in that language that I thought produced any type of negative legal issue for the board. My review was limited to that aspect, and of course the ultimate decision in regard to the resolution is subject to a vote of the full board.
And so, did you feel that the PURPA contract was in the best interest of the plant board?
Well, that's a different question. That's the ultimate question for the board.
Okay. Does anyone else have a comment on the PURPA contract or a motion?
Well, subject's been beat to death, so I think it's time to act on it one way or another.
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution for adopting the PURPA resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Any opposed?
I'm not opposed, but I'm going to abstain since I just got all this and had a chance to
Okay.
review it.
And I guess I didn't vote since I was calling it, but I will vote in favor of PURPA.
How did it end up? 4
4 yes,
yeses and 1 abstain?
Okay. Our next item, consider approval resolution of the contract for integration of the member-owned resource SEPA entitlement between the Frankfort Plant Board and the Kentucky Municipal Energy Agency. Again, James, you looked at that.
Similar to the previous item, I was asked by the board to review these, the resolution and the contract to see if I determined any legal issues that I thought would be negative to the Frankfort Plant Board. I did not discover anything negative that we need to address, but my review was limited to that. And again, the decision of whether to adopt approve the resolution and the contract are subject to a vote of this board.
And for this item, we had E3 make a report on where they thought it could be improved. And we also have a response from Brown Thornton on that same issue. I also went to the KyMEA minutes and noted that their statement is to advise KYMEA on our intentions by April 1st. It does not say specifically to have a signed contract. And I have that here somewhere. Yes, the motion of the KYMEA board was to notify the Frankfort Plant Board regarding the SEPA contract and notify it of the deadline to communicate its intentions to KYMEA by April 1st, 2018. So we could conceivably ask E3 to consult with Brown Thornton to come to agreement on what is the best way of wording the contract from our consultant standpoint, our professional services that we've hired. And in the meantime, write a letter to KYMEA saying, yes, if we choose to do this, yes, we do want SEPA to take, or to KYMEA to handle our SEPA energy, and we want to work on the contract a little bit more. Throwing that out for discussion.
Can we just ask the KYMEA CEO is here? Can we ask him for clarification on what we need to do?
Yes. Doug, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay.
The intent of that vote was for you to just get your intentions that you're either in or you're not going to do it. We have transmission issues we need to be concerned about, and I can't guarantee that the board's going to, if you don't give your assigned contract, that the board's going to prolong this further. I don't know what they're going to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Could you give us some sense of what the transmission issues are? We spoke, last month, and as long as what came out of that to me was that as long as we transferred it to KYMEA, there really wasn't a financial risk there or a management risk, and so the risk was only if we decided to go someplace else completely different than KYMEA.
Yeah, it triggers a new study perhaps with KU. We don't have any certainty.
But only if we leave, not if we do it after April, right? Only if we decide not to transfer the SEPA, correct?
Mr. Baldwin, as you are right now, you're not giving your SEPA. Right now, your SEPA entitlements are still with this board. If you're not going to give them to KYMEA is going to have to amend its transmission service agreement with KU, taking your 15 megawatts out of the transmission.
Sure. I guess
and as a result, that may take 9 months.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually not
jeopardize the other members.
And that's not what I'm suggesting. So my question is, because I don't think anybody here is suggesting that we're not going to transfer it. The discussion is just resolving the recommendations from E3 and KYMEA.
All I can say is that this board has had that contract that's in front of you for over a year now.
Well, no, the contract was brought to us a year ago, and we rejected it. And the same contract was brought to us, I guess, in February or January.
I'm not aware that the board rejected the contract.
We voted against it. We voted against it in February, I believe, of 2017.
If you don't take any action tonight, the KYMEA board will be advised that you all rejected it. They'll move on.
Well, that happened a year ago, but that's certainly not what we're saying tonight. What we're saying tonight, I believe, per the chairperson, is that we would like to integrate the recommendations from our consultants into the contract and still intend to move forward with transferring the member-owned resource to KYMEA.
I'm unaware that the board rejected it. I would be glad to take that information back to KYMEA. Nobody at KYMEA was aware that the board rejected the contract.
Well, we voted against it in February of 2017.
So a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago.
You voted against it in February?
I believe it's February, March, yeah.
Of 2017.
I believe.
I'll go back and check the minutes.
Yeah.
If that's the case, that's fine.
But
I think we get back to the same issue, though. If we're trying to incorporate E3's recommendations into the contract, we get back to the same issue of us having a different contract than everybody else who has signed it. And so then that necessitates all the other municipalities having to agree for us to have a contract different than what they have. And I don't want to put words in you guys' mouth, but I think that isn't going to go.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily the case.
I did talk to Ron Hurd and said they have, monthly meeting. We can propose different things. They can consider it. He did mention the motion. We didn't talk about the specifics. I hadn't read it at that point. But it's still something that we could discuss.
I mean, we have a recommendation from our consultants. It seems we should at least, make an attempt to present that to KYMEA and get an official response.
Well, I think we have in the response that Mr. Musson.
I don't believe we have. I don't think
we have a response
we voted to try to do it last month, but it was voted down, so we haven't sent them the recommendations.
He replied.
We do have a reply from Brown Thornton. We have a reply.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Okay.
Yeah, I only just saw it. But this, we do have a letter from Brown Thornton, which is an analysis of the E3 suggestions.
Let me ask you a question. Does the E3 recommendations pertain to the SEPA contract or KYMEA?
This most recent one they're speaking about now is just in particular to the SEPA contract. And
I know, but the E3 analysis was about, is that pertaining to what is E3 recommendations? Are they to change the KYMEA? Some provision in KYMEA?
No.
Or to SEPA?
Just in the way we're transferring the SEPA.
Right. So there are two efforts that E3 worked on. One was some suggestions for the organization, and then this is very specific that we asked E3 to look at in February.
So, for instance, one of the recommendations was, as it is now, there's no defined date when the credits from any of our SEPA power will be assigned to us. And so we don't know how long those millions of dollars will be in limbo before they're assigned back to this agency. It's administrative.
Let me ask another elementary question, because that's where I'm at. In the I guess the allocation of energy, do we necessarily get back specifically our energy from our SEPA allocation?
Do those electrons come here? Is that
Well, I
what
know
you're
it
saying?
does. I know that does it. But
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
in some. Well, okay, yeah. Let's use that literally. Like, do we get our specific allocation back to us?
Not currently, but the proposal is that on May 1st, 2019, we would.
Okay,
Under
so
this contract. That's what the contract is about.
what I'm trying to see is what's the material impact on the Frankfort Plan Board of where the SEPA agreement is now versus what you're proposing financially, and just the end energy that's coming, electricity that's coming to the ratepayers. What's the difference?
So you're saying what's the difference between the contract as proposed by KYMEA?
No, not the contract.
No?
What's the difference, the impact financially to the Frankfort Plant Board of the SEPA agreement as written by KYMEA versus what E3 is saying? And what's the material impact on the electricity that's coming to the ratepayer's home?
It's an excellent question. We don't have that specific analysis inside the response from E3. E3 pointed out places for us to discuss and to investigate further. One of them being the one that I pointed out about when those payments transfer, but the actual dollar amount becomes complicated by the voided cost, how much of the energy is sold. So there's no straight line number there. We'd have to have some analysis there.
But all of this is a projection. I guess when I looked at the SEPA presentation. Oh, I didn't know I was getting a picture taken of me. You took my memory, my man.
So when you looked at the SEPA presentation that Doug did on,
I guess nothing is absolute, but the $600,000 to $700,000 a year that is saying that would come to Frankfort Plant Board versus what I've been watching, the negative or the deficit that's becoming up until this month.
Oh, well, we should maybe clarify that. The deficit is because of the work on the dam.
I understand that it will improve when the dam that's being but the amount of money in that allocation goes up too.
Well, yeah, and it's due, okay.
I mean,
They're
what
two
I saw
separate
was it
issues
was
there.
$600,000 to $700,000 that in SEPA that would come to us, and once the dam, I don't forget the name of the dam, once it's
There are a whole
fixed,
series of them,
that it could go to $800,000 to $900,000 a year.
right.
That's
And that's
Some-
regardless of this SEPA contract.
what do you mean? It's regardless of
Well,
the SEPA.
those are improvements being made on the dam.
No, I'm not talking about the dam. The improvements on the dam raises the amount of money that KYMEA will be projected to give us from the $600,000 to $700,000 to the $700,000 to $800,000 to $900,000. That's what when the dam is fixed, it raises the amount.
Right, regardless of what we do with the energy, it raises it.
I'm not following when you say what we're doing with the energy.
Well, right now, OMU takes the energy and sells it for us, and we get so much money.
But you're not getting paid, as I understand it. Again, I'm new, but you're not getting paid for the capacity now.
That's correct.
And that's the amount. That's what I'm talking about. The capacity that you're getting, projecting the $600,000 to $700,000 for, and would go up when the dam is fixed. Projected to go up. I know nothing's absolute.
Right.
So I'm not sure what. That's why I go back to my original question. What is the financial difference between what E3 is recommending versus what the SEPA agreement is, and what is the electrical impact to the ratepayer who is just wanting to turn their lights on between the two differences?
I think we don't have a number for that.
Then I make a motion that we accept the KYMEA SEPA contract.
Well, I guess the only comment I would make is we're definitely talking about millions of dollars instead of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and potentially significant dollars just based on that run recommendation.
Mr. Mason needs a second, and I second his motion.
Okay, any further discussion?
It's been clear to me throughout this whole process, and we've just beat this thing to death, is that by doing this, by integrating our SEPA capacity and energy into KYMEA, our customers will benefit significantly. For that reason, I'll be voting yes on this one.
But I think the other discussion is how much more could they be benefiting? And
Well,
as Steve definitely pointed out,
Well,
we don't know what that number
lots of
is.
speculation out there, can go on forever, but we're dealing with contracts and necessity to do things and not do things. And so we're in discussion, I understand.
Well, I think that we have recommendations from folks that do have in-depth knowledge of all of this, and they do feel like there are material things that that could be adjusted that would be more in the favor of our ratepayers, and I think it's important that we heed that and get that quantified so we have those answers.
I call for the question, Madam Chairman.
I just would add one more comment, which is we've gone out for the best outside recommendations that we can get, nationally known, internationally known consultants to advise us on what is the best step to take. And we had an opportunity, certainly back in February, to act on that and to have James Liebman work on the contract and propose it, but we weren't able to get the votes to do that then. So, Kathy, please go ahead and call the vote.
Kathy, let's define the vote. The vote, yes,
motion, you mean?
is to approve the resolution and contract for integration of member-owned resource SEPA entitlements between the Frankfort Plant Board and the KYMEA. So a vote yes is to do that. The vote no would be to not do that.
Member Hale?
Yes.
Member Rosen?
No.
Member Mason?
Yes.
Member Ludwig?
Yes.
Member Baldwin?
No.
Thank you, Kathy. The motion passed. Our next item is consider award of RFP 2018-01 Energy Efficiency Program Development to Vermont Energy Investment Corporation for the not-to-exceed amount of $120,000. Vint, would you be?
Yes, Madam Chair and Board.
Thank you.
If you will remember at the budget discussions, one of the items that came up was energy efficiency programs and how to implement those. And at that time, the board agreed to set aside $120,000 in this current fiscal year's budget for moving forward with an energy efficiency study on how to begin this type of programs. So in response to that, we'll read some of it here just for the benefit of the people on TV, but in response to that, the Frankfort Plant Board requested professional service proposals from firms regarding expertise in developing system-wide energy strategies designed to boost efficiency and help minimize the life cycle cost associated with energy production, distribution, and use. So the Plant Board was seeking firms that could help it, I guess, wrangle the concept of energy efficiency. There are literally thousands of things you can do with energy efficiency. So the concept was to have someone who is an expert in the field to help us narrow down things that work best for our particular customers, our region, and our specific situation, and help us identify, number one, what type of programs we think would be successful, and help us to engage with our customers and stakeholders in the community about what they think is important in this particular area, and look at ways we can implement that, look at ways that we could define what is considered successful, what our goals would be specifically. So it's kind of a high level, wrap your arms around the concept of energy efficiency, and then give our board a roadmap, if you will, on how to move forward, what kind of programs we would try to implement, get an idea of what those costs would be for those particular programs, and maybe give the board some tools to make future decisions on actual implementation of energy efficiency programs. Now, to be clear, this particular item is not to implement specific energy efficiency programs. This is to just do that high-level study and figure out what we believe will work for us. So, in keeping with that concept, the RFP was sent to 9 firms. We had 5 responses. One response was a decline to submit, so there were actually 4 responses to review. We reviewed those, and we recommended Vermont Energy Investment Corporation as the number 1 choice. So we went and negotiated with that particular firm, and we were able to negotiate the price down from the original ask down to an amount that fit within our budgetary limits. And the period of the performance of this contract will be from April 1 of 2018 through October 30th of 2018. The staff attorney has reviewed the contract. It meets with his approval. And again, this amount is in the Plant Board electric budget on page 43. I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you have.
We've got a contract here that must be 100 pages long.
I think a lot of it was their proposal. I think the actual contract is relatively short.
You know, I just have a problem with paying $120,000 to another consultant to study something. You know, we've gone consultant crazy. I mean, we just spend all this money on consultants and lawyers, just keeps going.
Well,
you know,
to clarify
it just seems like there's a better way to do it.
Well, this is a firm that actually works for AMP, our energy supplier to the north in Ohio. And it helps people at all levels, residential, industrial, retail, so bigger businesses and smaller businesses, work more efficiently to use energy, or when they use energy. Things like advising on LED lighting as a cost savings. Helping people focus in on things like storm doors and insulation. It's a way of helping people with their energy bills by not buying as much energy. by acting more efficiently. And that there are people who have looked into this and have studied it and have developed some information that is easy to disseminate to the public to help them buy into this idea and how they can help themselves.
All these, all these subjects, we've batted these around forever. But there's lots of well-known ways to encourage efficiency. It just seems like to me it's overkill to go out here and hire another consultant for $120,000 to come up with another study and make some suggestions to us for some programs. It just seems like it's excessive to me.
Well, Vent, do you feel like your staff has the background and expertise and bandwidth to be able to produce the similar product?
Our staff does not have the expertise that Vermont Energy does in energy efficiency. The Frankfort Plant Board, as I'm sure you're aware, we haven't really had any energy efficiency programs of note. So, no, I mean, our staff doesn't have that much experience per se. I mean, we can certainly look into things and do whatever the board wishes.
I think this is a great opportunity for us to just hold off on spending the $120,000. And one of the advantages of being in KyMEA is to spread the cost around and to let KyMEA advance to the point of being able to have energy efficiency programs. And then maybe instead of spending the 120, we only have to spend 60.
Okay. Looking at the priorities for KyMEA, I don't think this is one of their upper priorities. And this is something we know we had customers who had a lot of trouble meeting their energy bills in January when we had more severe weather than normal. If they had better insulation, some advice on what to do and how to conserve, they wouldn't have those energy cost problems. And I think it's something that we as a community can do for we as a municipal can do for the community that would help them immediately versus an issue that KyMEA may get to sometime in the future.
But how are we going to administer that? You know, if we have this study done, and I mean, I've looked at this and I haven't known how I was going to vote on this because I really wanted to hear everybody's discussion today. For me, it becomes though a question. I realize that this is just a study to look at different things that are possible for our community.
A little bit more than a study in that it brings in people from the city commission, from industry, to talk to them about what would you like to see. I know one of the things that was particular about the Vermont proposal was to include universities and input, working with, say, Kentucky State, our only university here. So to incorporate input from the community on where your priorities are.
Okay, but just say that we do that, and I mean, I think it's great that they bring in different people within the community. That's definitely, important, and to get that input. But I guess my question is, so we do this and we determine that the community is interested in as you said, adding storm doors and insulation.
Well, reducing energy costs of residences.
So then how is that going to be administered? Who's going to decide?
Well, I think they work on that and suggest that in the proposal. They go through a number of steps.
I guess I just have a question and of a basic, what is the role of the plant board? And I think we have a lot of agencies within our community, such as ROSM, which does an excellent job, and things that address those type of issues of helping people that need the help. And I'm not sure, as municipal, electric company, if that's our role.
Well, I know historically Kentucky has ranked very, very low in terms of total energy cost for a home. In other words, our rates are relatively low, but the excess energy that's used because of lack of energy efficiency is high. So you have a higher cost of living here based on inefficiencies. And this would help focus on some of that problem.
But yet KU, there was an article in the Courier Journal a month or two ago talking about how KU LGE is cutting their energy efficiency programs because they're not cost effective. And so I guess I don't understand if KU, which has had the programs, is cutting back on them because they're not cost effective. Then why are we looking at going there?
Well, we're a municipal, they're for profit. So we're looking for what we can do to serve the community as part of our charter, and they are not focused the same way. Steve, have you had a time to absorb some of this program? I know it's probably something new, or it's not.
Well, I've kind of looked at it. I mean, I really haven't read a lot of it, because my first question to you, Ben, was kind of what are you trying to get from this, I guess? And
I think our primary goal is to, I would think, would be to establish what programs are viable for our community and the specific situation our community is in, be it our poverty rate, our employment, all those type of our breakdown of industrial versus commercial versus residential, et cetera, that we would establish what programs would work best in that particular situation, and then that this study would lay out for the board not only what programs you would take, but what the estimated, a good estimate of what the cost would be to implement those programs. I think the real idea here is to give the board a future decision-making tool that would help you make those decisions in the future. Again, this is not going to create an energy efficiency program for me directly.
So are you trying to get at causing various segments of your clientele to be efficient in their use of energy? Are you trying to figure ways of saving, being efficient in the use of energy that may help various segments of the
I mean, to be honest, I don't have those specific goals right now. That's one of the exercises, is to establish what the goals would make the most sense to help us guide us to those goals, and then to involve the stakeholders, involve our ratepayers, public officials in what they think their goals should be, and kind of bring all that together. So those goals are not, I don't think I have any predefined goals there. It's to basically find out what's important to them. We've had some conversations where, I don't want to pay more for a particular product, so okay, we tailor it so maybe you don't have as many offerings or options, but you keep the price the same, et cetera. So whatever the public and the officials would like to see, including the board, is all the stuff that would go into the pot.
Did they give you any other examples of where they've done similar work and what the savings might have been, or was it those? I noticed that they have a lot of places that they've done work. Did they give you any examples of similar work done and the resulting savings that might have come from those localities?
I can't remember off the top of my head. Through many of the ones we read, there were a few examples of specific savings. I don't remember off the top of my head on this one.
I think Vermont was one of the stronger proposals in answering some of those questions. But there are different aspects of it, but that would be the portion of the report here with the yellow star. But I think to look for a tangible answer of what would be the value in dollars and cents to the community, that really depends on the direction that the community says they want the program to go, at least on some level.
You have budgeted for this?
It is. It's in the budget that runs through July 1st.
Yeah, call for the question.
I think it's time, yes.
Have we had a motion?
We haven't had
No.
a second.
Well,
Sorry, yeah.
do we have
Call for a motion.
a motion? And sort of the motion is a question. So do we have a motion to move on this?
I move we award RFP 2018-01 Interefficiency Program Development to Vermont Energy Investment Corporation for the not to exceed amount of $120,000.
Do we have a second? I'll second it. Any further discussion? Kathy, why don't you go ahead and call this one, please?
Member Hale?
Oh, gosh. Yes.
Member Rosen?
Yes.
Member Mason?
Yes.
Member Ludwig?
No.
Member Baldwin?
Yes.
The motion passed. Thank you. And we'll go on to the next item. I guess we're back to the...
6.
Yep, number 6, consider award bid invitation 1652 for Phase 1 fencing, landscaping, and parking lot demolition to Meyer Midwest Incorporated in the amount of $514,800. Adam Hilliard will discuss.
Yes, ma'am. This project actually goes back to September of 2015 with the City Commission and a special board meeting we had. I didn't quite cover all that. I picked it up in August of 17. GRW made the final presentation to the board. The board approved that. We had a meeting, I think, the 28th of August with the Tanglewood Association and got their input on the project, and we moved some trees around and added some trees and made some changes. At that point, it came back to the board in the September 19th, 2017 meeting, where the board approved to basically approve the plan, and we submitted it to P&Z. At that time, the board also approved the schedule for the project. So we submitted it to P&Z October the 2nd of 2017. It took a little while to get through P&Z. There was some question whether or not it had to be go through planning and zoning. Basically, planning and zoning came back, and decided they would just handle it as a permit because technically there was no structure being built. It was more landscaping and fencing. So at that point, we sent it out to bid on January the 31st. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting held at the clubhouse. There were 3 potential bidders that showed up. Out of those 3 potential bidders, we had 2 bidders bid the project. And on March the 9th, we had the bid opening at the service center. Meyer Midwest bid $514,800, and Jackson Construction bid $950,000. Staff would recommend the bid go to Meyer Midwest in the amount of $514,800, being the lowest bidder meeting specification. And basically, we have budgeted about $900,000 for the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So, Stephen, I know that you got out there to see the whole lay of the land, and
I did, but I still don't truly understand the financial cost and stuff. I understand what that is. But I did have a question. Has the plan board had any other complaints from other neighborhoods that you had to handle that issue? An issue such as that, as this?
Personally, I don't know of any that we've dealt with. Me personally, no. I don't know about the rest of the staff. I don't, Ben stepped out, he would be the next person I guess to ask, so.
Okay.
I guess my time on the board, which is only 2 years, 5 months, I don't think any other neighborhood has raised a problem.
Would it set things back or mess things up too much if we tabled this until next month? I mean, I don't know about Mr. Mason, but for me, in the, I guess now 6 months I've been on the board, I've spent so much time on the KYMEA issues that I haven't really gone back and looked at the reservoir and all of that issue.
Well, this is just phase one.
Yeah, I realize that. But I wouldn't mind having a little more time to really delve a little deeper into this issue if it doesn't totally mess things up to postpone it.
Okay, and I apologize. Aaron Nickerson is here with GRW, and he could probably answer some of those questions, whether or not it would affect the time. I don't think it was, but Aaron is here.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the award bidder. If we award to Meyer Midwest as a low bidder, we have identified in the contract completion date, which is November 12th, which is a somewhat, it's a sufficient amount of time for what the project is and the scope is. So my expectation would be there wouldn't be much pushback. They may ask for a little bit more time for completion, but the scope that they're working on, they would technically have to be complete by that time, or they're not going to get it in the ground anyway. So that's going to come down to a negotiation with them if they'd be willing to keep that same date or if they ask for more time. But I think it can be resolved without causing financial issues with the project because they're not under contract yet. They don't have any financial obligations. And per contract, they're to hold their bid for a prescribed amount of time anyway. So if we stay, I believe the bid was 90 days is what we told them to have to hold the bid for. So if you go beyond that point, you're probably looking at them dropping the bid.
So that's 90 days. When did that 90-day clock start?
That's from a bid opening. So that's
March the 9th.
March which?
March the 9th.
In terms of doing the landscaping, I would think it'd be earlier would be better for planting the trees.
yeah, when we get into the project, where it gets awarded, the phasing of that project will be based on what time periods that we best. Most of that planning based on early fall.
Phase 2.
Just because of the demolition.
I see,
Construction
okay.
that's going on.
True.
There's no sense in putting in significant plantings of trees.
Until we've done that.
Damaging or with equipment. So I wouldn't foresee the timetable for the installation of that changing much, regardless of what happens, unless we really push this back and wait too long.
And our permit from planning and zoning, does that have a time frame?
The permit doesn't start till the contractor fills it out.
I see, okay.
So we actually couldn't go further until we actually approved the contract with the contractor.
Okay, thanks. Any other discussion on that? Okay.
Phase 1 could be accomplished irrespective of what happens with Phase 2. Is that right?
Correct.
And Phase 1 includes demolition of this parking area.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
Which the board as customers have paid for. Now we're going to tear it down.
Do we have a motion?
Well, I move we award bid invitation 1652 for Phase 1 fencing, landscaping, and parking lot demolition to Meyer Midwest Inc. in the amount of $500,800. Sorry, $514,800.
And a second? I'll second it. Any more discussion?
So then you're not willing to just wait another month?
No, I'm not. I feel that the neighborhood association is happy with it. The city has approved it. We have a good bid for the fence, which is the most expensive portion of it. It's been looked at for well, Adam went through the timeline since,
The original issue, I guess, was September 2015. I guess part of the board has had it since September or August 15th.
okay, so,
Whenever all parties kind of agreed and brought a final design back to the board.
okay, so since August, we've been considering it. So I'm satisfied with the design. I'm ready to see it move on. So that's why I seconded, and that's why I'm in favor of it. Any further discussion?
Well, as before, I'm happy with all of it except the demolition. And I voted against the demolition back in September, and I haven't changed my view.
Okay. If there's no more discussion, Kathy, please call the vote.
Member Hill?
No.
Member Rosen?
Yes.
Member Mason?
I'm passing because I'm not up on the financials, the impact on the ratepayers, and that's what I said in my opening points. That's my primary thing, is what the ratepayers are paying. So and by passing, I'm not impacting what the other board members who all have previously, well, maybe not all have previously, voted and made their feelings known through a vote. So I pass. Abstain.
Member Ludwig?
No.
Member Baldwin?
Yes.
Okay, 2-2.
So the motion failed. We'll go on to the next topic, which is consider award bid invitation 1653 for two pad mounted transformers to Cape Electric Supply in the amount of $72,980.
Hi. Staff prepared this invitation for two of these pad mount transformers. We sent it out to 9 vendors. I believe 5 responded. After reviewing the bids, staff recommends awarding to Cape Electric Supply the amount of $72,980, as they are the lowest bid meeting specifications. These transformers will be used to replenish just depleted inventory levels, which is low on them. And I would add on at the tab sheet on page 129, I noticed a typo. It says 1, but there's 2. The total dollars is correct. It's just a typo.
I move we award bid invitation 1654 for 2 pad-mounted transformers to WEG Transformer in the amount of $58,416.
Oh, you're on number 8.
Am I on the wrong one?
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah,
they're very similar.
So, award bid invitation number 1653 for 2 pad-mounted transformers to Cape Electric Supply in the amount of $72,980. Sorry.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of purchasing these transformers?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So unanimous. Number 8, consider award bid invitation 1654 for 2 pad-mounted transformers to WEG Transformers in the amount of $58,416. Again, Mark Redmond.
We prepared this invitation for 2 more pad-mount transformers. It was sent to 9 vendors again. And this one we had 7 responses, and we had 1 that was a no bid. After reviewing bids, staff recommends awarding to WEG Transformers the amount of $58,416, as they are the lowest bidder, meeting specifications included in the bid. These are for the same thing, just to replenish depleting inventory levels.
I move we award bid invitation number 1654 for 2 pad-mounted transformers to WEG Transformer in the amount of $58,416.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Okay, number 9, consider request for public hearing to be held April 3rd regarding adjustments to the cable advertising rate card, which fall in line with Viamedia partnership, including rates for 26 new networks and new online advertising structure.
Hi, everybody.
Yes, Scott.
I'm Scott Stafford. I'm the production manager at Media Services.
In December, the board approved a managed services agreement with Viamedia in Lexington to take over the back end of our cable advertising operations. It's primarily traffic and billing. We currently insert commercials on 24 cable networks, and as part of our Viamedia agreement, we can begin inserting commercials on 26 additional networks as early as April. So in December, Gary Grider explained that the staff would need to return to the board to request adjustments to our rate structure to account for the new networks, as well as establish rates for a completely new arm of online advertising. We'd also like to take the opportunity to rebuild and simplify our rates across the board, utilizing maximum rates. 2 rates for our cable advertising, 1 for our core card, which applies to all our regular business clients, and a maximum political rate for political candidates. For our online products, we would propose a maximum percentage above wholesale. We arrived at those maximums after some extensive consultation with Viamedia. We asked for their expertise and experience with cable systems across the country to suggest rates that would match our size and region of market. So simplifying to a max rate allows us an agility we've never had to account for a highly fluid entertainment industry. Currently, we have a rate in the tariff for every network on every day part. Now, with 50 networks and up to 7 day parts across 5 different rate cards, that would be 1,350 individual iterations of rates. Staff can't ask the board to change a single rate when one show on one network explodes in popularity, and somebody, if The Walking Dead explodes in popularity, and people have to see it. So by the time that action can be taken, the show season is over, and the nature of cable and entertainment is so fluid. If staff slides rates up and others down under a max rate as ratings and viewership changes, we can be more competitive in the marketplace. For our online advertising products, wholesale prices are even more volatile, sometimes changing more than once a day. So with all that in mind, we'd like to make a request for a public hearing to consider that new rate structure. And I would emphasize that none of these rates affect our cable subscribers. These are strictly cable advertising customers. None of these changes would affect our cable subscribers. So if you all have any questions.
I like what I see in y'all's department and so forth, because in the last couple of years I've seen real motion in the direction of trying to improve our marketing and how we go about selling things and so forth, and making the public more aware of what we offer. So I think it's just continuing in that direction.
It does, and it's a great
What you're
tool.
asking here for is flexibility.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Well, I had one question. In the third paragraph, it talks about making FPB more competitive. Does that mean lowering rates, or it means raising rates?
In some cases, it's lowering, and that's what we're talking about, having a maximum rate based on viewership, because every network is changing week to week, and not just network hour to hour based on the program. So as some programs become less popular, the value of that programming decreases, and our rates would decrease to reflect that. On another channel, another hour may raise, and so usually it's just a balance of the two across the board.
Okay.
How does that affect existing ad customers? Does that set up a situation where one customer can have a block buy for, say, 6 months, and then another customer comes in, yet they have a different rate for the same channels, since they're varying with?
You would lock in a rate when you write the contract. Normally it's month to month, though, so we wouldn't get into a case where you're. Thank you all.
Okay. So, are all the members comfortable with having a hearing on this on April 3rd? That's in 2 weeks.
I move that we have a public hearing, April 3, 2018, regarding adjustments to cable advertising rate card so forth as explained in the item tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of, and we're voting on just having the hearing on April 3rd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So motion passed.
Madam Chair, are you going to do that at 5 o'clock?
Oh.
Just so we're clear.
That's, you're right, it isn't on here, but that's what I was thinking, if that's good for everyone. I chose or suggested at the agenda meeting that we go with a Tuesday night, since often it's clear in people's schedules.
That's
Because of the
typically
regular-
how we do it.
Okay, good. So thank you for clarifying that, James, and please add that, Kathy. Okay. Consider approving Smithsonian Network Agreement, 2 CBS Sports Network amendments, and 3 CBS Television Network Video on Demand amendments.
Good evening,
And-
members of the board. My name is
You're
David
not
Columbia
Harvey.
with the Cable Telecom Department.
Okay, good.
You can find this information on page 132 of the board packet. Staff recommends approving the Smithsonian Network Agreement and the CBS Sports Network Amendment. Staff and the Cable Advisory Committee recommend approving the CBS Television Network Video on Demand Amendment. These direct agreements have terms through December 31st, 2021. For a little bit of history with those networks, in early 2016, FPB launched CBS Video on Demand at the same time we launched CBS Sports Network. We were able to negotiate a deal and feel that it was a very positive one for the FPB cable customers. In exchange for launching the CBS Sports Network on preferred cable, CBS provided CBS Video on Demand content for FPB at no additional cost. As our Smithsonian Network agreement was expiring, CBS requested FPB to move the network from HD Plus to preferred cable. FPB was able to get CBS to agree to delaying this migration until the end of 2019. Additionally, FPB requested that CBS extend our existing agreements for carriage of CBS Video on Demand and CBS Sports Network to match the expiration of the new Smithsonian agreement, guaranteeing no additional cost for CBS Video on Demand to FPB customers through 2021. There will be no associated rate increase required for these renewals. The Assistant GM for Administration has reviewed these agreements, and they meet with his approval.
You want to spring for it?
I move that the, haven't read a thing. I need to read it. Consider approving Smithsonian Network Agreement, 2 CBS Sports Network Amendment, and CBS Television Network Video on Demand Amendment.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. Item number 11, consider approving Weather Channel renewal.
I've already done
All right, this one can be found on page 202 of your board packet. Staff and the Cable Advisory Committee recommend approval of the Weather Channel renewal. This NCTC agreement has a term through February 28, 2022. FPB currently carries Weather Channel on Channel 49 and an HD on Channel 549. This agreement also covers Weather Scan, which is carried on Channel 19. FPB's existing agreement does not expire until February 28, 2019. This early renewal affords FPB the opportunity to reduce the current Weather Channel rate by nearly 15% with no additional launch obligations. FPB's Weather Scan will also be reduced by 16%. While these reductions do not equate to a large amount of actual dollars, any opportunity to reduce programming expense is welcome. Should FPB wait until the expiration of their current Weather Channel agreement to enter this agreement, those reductions would no longer be available. This agreement has been reviewed by the Assistant GM for Administration and meets with his approval.
I looked this over and wondered why they were being so generous to us. And all I came up with is that they're competing with a cell phone where you have a free weather update.
Well, the Weather Channel is another independent operator just like us, and it's better for them to lock down customers.
Even giving
as
us
they're-
this, well, it's not huge discount, but it is a discount.
Yes.
I also speculated that maybe they see competition coming unless they lower their rates. or you don't feel that?
I wouldn't be aware of any.
Okay. It's just my observations, because it doesn't happen very often that they offer.
Yep, it's a good deal for us, and we think that we should take advantage of it.
Any other comments or a motion?
I'll move that we approve the Weather Channel renewal.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Consider approval of an amendment to our agreement with CenturyLink Communications for burstable internet bandwidth.
Good evening. As most of the board members will know, we come up before the board several times a year to update or request for additional internet bandwidth that we provide to our customers. And this item is no different. Back in July of 2017, we came to you with an upgrade to our CenturyLink circuits, which that board approved. That got us a new link going toward Ashburn, Virginia. Excuse me. At that same board meeting, we got a transport circuit set up to go to Chicago, and that link is nearing completion. And we told you at that time that we would probably be coming back in several months to request a east-west sort of balance connection for our CenturyLink circuit, and that's what this item before you is about tonight. So essentially this circuit is identical in just about every way. It's just an amendment to the original contract. It's still a 2 gig commitment to the Chicago facility, and the staff attorney has reviewed it, and it is within the budget.
I thought this was just confusing that right now we have a connection with Virginia and we're adding Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Chicago, both of those items were approved in the July meeting.
Okay. And the burstable internet, does that mean that we're only paying for the amount we use? And
correct. Yeah, so it's a 2 gig commit, so we basically say we're going to pay for a minimum, and anything that we use above that will get charged at the rate that's specified in the contract. Our intention is to keep it under the 2 gig unless we have, just a big rush on, additional demand.
Yeah. So will this improve internet speeds for our customers?
It's always an effort to try to stay ahead of the demand that's continually growing. So most of it is just about adding additional capacity so that we stay ahead of the growing demand. So it's not really going to, the customers won't see an impact unless we don't continue to expand our capacity.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. So, Steve,
I'll
did you
second
second
it. I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. None opposed. Okay, number 13, we did that 13 through, whoops, I'll switch back. Thank you.
Board care to take a brief recess?
Well, we could,
So last two.
yeah, it's,
I have
down
to
to
leave
new-
the meeting anyhow, so maybe I should.
oh.
I have to leave at 7:30
Okay.
for sure, so
Oh, well then, did you
it
want
doesn't
to
matter for me.
talk about new and old business for a few minutes, and then we'll
Closed session, all your ear were out. He talked before about one big matter in particular.
So you're suggesting we switch over right now to the closed session?
We could, if that's what the board would like to do.
Be a good idea to allow Mr. Ludwig to participate.
Okay, good. So we'll, Ralph, you have to leave right at 7:30, so that's 12 minutes?
5, 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I'll move to call a closed session, to discuss liquidated damages matter and copyright matter pursuits KRS 61.810, subsection 1C.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Program, I'll call it program license and copyright matter.
Second?
All
Okay.
in favor?
Aye. Okay. And let's see, do we have a motion?
I move to direct staff. Do we need to wait for Hans?
Oh, he's here.
I move to direct staff to negotiate per discussion in closed session. Is that where James go? Is that sufficient?
A second.
All in favor? Motion passed. So, let's see.
I gotta see you.
Night. I believe we're on new and old business. Discuss 2017 auditor comments related to the IT environment. Is that you, David? Okay, good.
On page of your board packet, page 392, 393, this is the last 2 pages of the 2016-17 financial statement audit for the Frankfort Plant Board. It was issued by Crowe Horwath. And findings and internal control over financial reporting, and the item was informational technology environment. There were about 7 bullet points that were listed in the recommendations, or at least, I should say, findings. It is worth noting that we had a clean financial statement audit. It was unqualified opinion. Everything's good there. This is just in reviewing the audit, the auditors noticed some ideas and suggestions about the IT environment. So currently, and this is a part of this, page 392, 393, gives management's responses to this. The very first one, I'd be glad to walk through them all, or I could, in summary, say that myself, Hans, Casey, and the IT department, we've been talking and walking through these. I feel pretty confident out of the 7 bullet points, the last 6 have been addressed. The first one is management has not established an IT strategic plan, change management policy, information security policy, and incident policy. And currently we have a draft forms of the change management, information security, and incident. I should say the change management, information security in draft, and the incident policy is working on that as well. So long story short, we are working through these and fully expect to have these addressed, and whenever our auditors show up and walk through these statements and walk through these things for next year, that we'll have these addressed. I'd be glad to give you any, we have some notes that I could give to the board. I'd rather not talk out loud about security measures that we're taking in our IT environment, but we definitely are addressing these, and I can assure you that these are being addressed and will be cleared up for the next audit.
And I know, I think Katrina mentioned the auditors are already doing some preliminary things, but certainly they wouldn't get to this yet. But.
No, in the planning stage, we're walking through some higher level things, but they'll come through and they'll sit and they'll walk through the implementation, I should say the steps that we've put in to address these. They'll sit down with one of the IT professionals and say, show me what you do, and they'll make sure that what we do is matching up to the policy and to procedures. Okay. So we feel good about that we are addressing these and are fully aware of the issue.
Okay.
And you have some notes you could share about the ones that have been completed today?
I do. I've got a memo that I can get out to the board. It's already drafted.
Okay,
so.
thank you.
And then you don't have any expectation that those first two that haven't been addressed yet wouldn't be addressed by the commencement of the next audit?
I think the strategic plan, I feel pretty good about the change management, information security, and incident. The IC strategic plan, not,
Okay.
it is more.
We can just note some dates on the memo. That'd be great.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So I can get that turned around to you.
Sounds good. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. And then the next item is consider revision to a plan for FPB frozen pension plan. And so I guess that was just a slight change. Go ahead.
Good evening. Previously, the board voted to terminate the frozen retirement plan effective 3/31/2018, and this is the retirement plan that was in place prior to the plant board participating in CERS. We have 5 remaining participants in the plan, and at the February meeting, we presented an amendment number 4. And the purpose of this amendment was to allow for lump sum distributions, and that was approved by the board. Since then, the actuary has reviewed the amendment language and recommends a change in the assumptions to be used to calculate the lump sum payment amounts, and to also add language that specifies, in case a participant can't be located, will roll over the amount into an IRA. Unfortunately, the copy of the amendment that is in your board package, there was a sentence left out, and so Kathy, I think, has provided copies of an updated version. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
If there are no questions, is there a motion that we need to take to say we're amending the version?
I believe so. Last month, I remember I watched the tape, and Mr. Ludwig had read the prior amendment, and the language is different, so we're just asking to have this updated. This is the final wording.
Okay. Okay.
May I ask if we could move to something else and come back? I haven't read this, and I need to read it, and I can read it and hopefully.
Well, why don't we could do a short break? Maybe that would be best, because the next things I think you'll be interested in. So how about reconvene at 7:45, so that gives you 7 minutes, if that's enough?
I think I can read that.
Okay, good. So we are about to consider a motion on the revision to the plan amendment for the FPB frozen pension plan. And do we have a motion?
Make the motion.
Okay. So, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to consider revisions, well, to accept the revisions for the plan amendment for the FPB frozen pension plan. All in favor? Motion carried unanimously. And so then we have general manager's comments. David, will you take it from there?
Sure.
Yes, I would like to just give the board a little update on the hybrid fiber coaxial amplifier and line extender infrastructure improvement project. Back in 2014, when the board approved building the head end, along with that included an infrastructure improvement piece to the project. The board approved that infrastructure piece, the line extender and amplifier project, back in September. There are many different improvements and additional capabilities this gives us. I'm going to turn it over to Adam Heller to give you just some technical information about the improvements and also a little timeline as well. So,
Yes, thanks, David. Basically, for the board, I mean, you two guys were on when the project came about. So basically what it is We run an HFC system, which is basically we have fiber to a node, and from the node it is back to copper that hits amplifiers and line extenders, which eventually shows up at a piece of equipment on the back of your house. About 2014, we started having issues with equipment. Of course, this equipment at that time was 16 years old, or 14, 15 years old. We started having some issues, and we had spares, and we were able to source spares. So what we done is, and especially we seen the problem when the temperatures were cold, the equipment just couldn't stabilize because the amplifier constantly ranges based on temperature and different things in the area. So the equipment started failing. So basically we put some steps in place to start replacing some of it with our spares. Spares became an issue because the equipment was so old we could not source spares anymore. So some other ideas we had was we would actually buy new equipment and replace certain nodes or certain areas of nodes to pull that equipment out to use it as spares. And we just kept having trouble. We were trying to stay ahead of things. So we started looking at, actually replacing the equipment. But then if you look at just replacing the equipment, you're not really gaining anything. So we met with Aris, who was the engineer, used to be Motorola, now it's Aris. And they actually designed a product that we could replace our existing trunk amps and line extenders with, but actually give us more bandwidth to our customers. And so after looking at that and playing with the idea, well, that's what we decided to go with. And as David said, in September it was approved. We ordered the equipment. We got most of it in between basically then and January. We went to one of the nodes that we had updated the new equipment in. It just wasn't the newer frequency or the newer style. And we started doing testing. So basically for the last 6 weeks, we've been doing testing and running that system at 1 gigahertz, which is basically gives us 40 more channels or about 1.6 gigs more data throughput. And at the September board meeting, we also mentioned that we would be back and ask for contract labor. And at this point, we're finishing up the contract labor bid, and we're hoping to bring that back in front of the board in the April meeting, if everything goes correctly. So that's kind of where we're at with the project.
So I just wanted to let you know that that was a big expenditure. It kind of flows right into the next item I had listed in there to talk about a fiber to the home project. Back in August, we received a report from Engineering Associates, partnered with Kersey Consulting. This was looking at the future of infrastructure for FPB and specifically broadband. In their report, they had mentioned, going forward, and we all kind of knew this is where it was going. As far as technology goes, the Internet of Things, from all of our services moving to an IP-based delivery, that we would, going forward, look at fiber infrastructure. The idea of replacing the line extenders and amplifiers was to give us a little more time on our current network to be able to deliver reliable service while considering how we transition over to replacement of the HFC network with fiber. So I just wanted to bring up during this GM comments just we would like to get started and consider moving forward with design of a fiber to the premise type network. Now, I'm not going to say it's a pilot, because what we're looking at is eventually the HFC network needs to be replaced. And so our proposal is to move forward with, slowly as we can produce the cash to pay for it, is to invest in fiber network for delivery of our telecom services. So really just wanted to talk, kind of have a discussion with the board. We as staff have some ideas of where we'd like to go first, kind of based on the proximity to the head end, the diversity of customers, and the density of the area. But really just want to throw that out and see what the board's thoughts were. We would like to start looking at a firm to start doing design. Thought about doing RFP, and then we also, looking at what we have today, Engineering Associates spent a lot of time with us, and in this initial report has done quite a bit of initial work on our system, looking at all of the different types of equipment, and also laying out some initial design already. And so have a thought to go ahead. If we were to hire a new firm, the Engineering Associates work, I think, would probably be thrown out the door and they would start fresh. So would we want to continue with, per our procurement policy, we could use as an engineering service this company we've already used, or go ahead for an RFP to make sure everybody felt comfortable that we got the firm we wanted. I know there were quite a bit of firms that were put on the initial distribution list for this RFP for the infrastructure improvement feasibility study. So I really just kind of like to throw it out to the board and see if you approve with moving forward as the Engineering Associates and Kersey report said, and just kind of get your thoughts on that. We know this is a competitive business, and we try to keep a little bit, we don't want to give all our cards away on where we want to go and what we want to do, but we had looked at, it's as long as we can build out as we can produce the cash to pay for it, we think as staff that that's the way to go to continue to give us that 10-year shot clock we have on the current HFC network and to begin design of some fiber areas.
I think it sounds good. The design, we couldn't do that ourselves internally, as, you know.
I think we could do part of it. And the other reason looking at, I mean, it's going to be a partnership regardless, because the amount of information and the traffic they will have here locally to do the design, we'll be working together. One reason I might recommend using EA is because it actually gives us the ability to check them, because basically they submitted numbers of what it was going to cost to design per phase. They actually have estimates on what the project was going to cost per phase or per node. And so I would recommend to the board using them. That way we have a reference to go by. And we don't have to use them for the whole project. We could use them for this first initial phase or whatever we want to call it. And just, you know, we have the study to go to verify what they said it was going to cost. So we kind of have a way to checks and balances on what it should cost. That would be my recommendation as far as starting all over. I would say this first phase, let's look at using them because we have current information.
When you have that same data point, though, if you use somebody else, you would still have some sense of what that node build-out was. I'm missing what the...
Well, I mean, to me, it's just like, okay, they did the report, and so you have a dollar figure that they said it was going to cost to build it. Mm-hmm. Since we have the relationship, I would think you would go on and use them to see how accurate they are. You don't know, another firm might come in and say, no, they're way off, but this gives you, I mean, we've already have their number, what it's going to cost in their estimate. So my recommendation would be, let's use them and see if they're actually close. That'd be my thing, because if you bring another company in, they might say, no, those numbers aren't no good. They might be higher.
Do you think we're making any decisions about technology or the way the network would evolve based on picking EA?
No, I mean, to me, I think, I mean, you fiber to the home, you have very few options as far as engineering. There's GPON, there's EPON. There's various technologies, but the design is still the same. The only caveat would be if you wanted to deploy an RFOG system. RFOG technology does not have the output, so it doesn't have a far enough reach. So you could, and that's a decision we need to talk about eventually, you know, as we get a little further along, if we want to add that component in and, you know, just tweak the design so we can add those in. But most of the time, all the different technologies have the same design criteria. It's just the electronics on the end that you're changing.
So what's the scope of the design effort? Is it just, is it middle network only? Is it all the way to the customer premise?
It would be.
Would it be all the way down to equipment recommendations for customer premise?
That's what
the whole soup nuts thing.
Yes, on a scalable basis. Like I said, we kind of talked internally that we would want to pay for it with cash as we go forward. As you know and I know, that technology is going to change by the time we start the project and end the project. So we would only want to buy the electronics for what we're turning on today. We wouldn't want to pre-wire houses and attach devices to a house for something that might never turn up. So the base of it is going to be the core infrastructure of the network, and we would probably stop short of the customer drop, is what I would propose.
Do we have some sense of what the dollar scale is for the design effort?
Yeah, well, it really depends on where you go, because if you look at areas of underground, of course, their designs are going to be quite a bit higher.
Are you guys going to get us a document that kind of lays out
that? It's in the report.
Yeah, it's 30, I think just 30.
Sorry, I just got the...
Oh, that's okay.
No, it's in the old report back in
the original
August.
one from
yes,
the EA guys. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like page 30. It goes through every node in our service area.
Okay.
Gives a cost for engineering, a cost for build. I mean, of course, they're estimates, but.
So you guys got to come back and give us a top three, or how are we going
Well,
to?
we were kind of wanting to feel the temperature of the board. I mean, is there a place that the board would like to see the infrastructure take place first? Or, I mean, we have our thoughts, but, you know, we would like to have the board's input too.
I guess personally, I'd like to see that data presented, what your top three are, reasons behind it, customer mix, that type of thing. Some sense of the cost of what that node would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we're probably working right off of that report, we do have two that we've honed in on, about a $1.1 million build out. All of it's aerial. Of course, anytime you get underground, it gets more expensive, but we can put that together in a memo. I hate to say where we want to go first, because then that will start all kinds of good news articles.
Let me ask you a question. You talked about aerial versus underground. Is it possible that we can get with the transportation cabinet and see what road projects they have, when they start doing the utility aspects of those projects, and removal and a movement of them, that we could slide our fiber optics in?
Yes, a bulk of the cost of underground is in the subdivision itself. It's the backyards with the fences and the flowers is where the cost of underground utilities really drive the cost up for going back in new after something's
So this fiber's
already
going all the way
to the house.
So any neighborhoods, are the neighborhoods in Frankfort that have that? I'm not asking for which ones, but
That have current fiber to the
all the
home.
way to the house?
I don't know of any. I know there's probably some deployments in the process, but I don't know of any that are actually all fiber today. No.
Well, there was that.
I take that back. I'm sorry.
Behind distillery, right?
We did a
Was it
pilot
just-
project in 2000. I want to say 2009, and it is a fiber project, fiber to the home. I'm
So
sorry.
are the neighborhoods where there's fiber in the neighborhood, but not to the homes?
No. I mean, we all of our subdivisions have fiber in them, not to the magnitude that we're talking about fiber to the home. So it would be additional fiber to what's there today.
The branches out to the house are not there, but the backbone is
Part of-
through the neighbor.
Part
some
of it.
neighborhoods?
Part of it, yeah. When you look at the technology we're looking at, it's a passive network. So basically, when you leave the head in, one strand of fiber will serve technically 32 homes. And so that is the infrastructure that has to be put in. In some areas, we might have the capacity to do a small subdivision with current fiber in place. In most areas, we do not have the capacity. So it would be a build from the head in all the way out.
Well, since we have a lot to do, if we, eventually get to the whole neighborhood, if we could maybe do some in-house training, so as we move along, we can have more
Oh, yes. yes.
capability in-house.
Right. Yes, and that's part of it, is this initial phase. That's what I'm saying. It's the thing with EA is, like, if we started with them, we can gauge them, we can learn from them, and then we can, if we want to push further, we can go out and send an RFP and get somebody else. But it also gives our staff some, see how much they can take on internally. So that's kind of the plan. And then, of course, there's quite a bit amount of training that's going to have to be happening with the staff is outside of engineering, as far as people that splice fiber, people that handle fiber drops, the equipment. That's a different tool set that we have today that we'll have to prepare for. But that makes sense, with the rolling out kind of slow. It gives us time to get those things in place.
Last year, up until the Christmas party, we had like 12.5% new employees. We had a large number. Are there any areas within the cable department where people are going to retire and we can hire people with this experience?
I don't think we can handle too many more retiring, to be honest with you.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just...
Yeah, we actually have a couple more that are not public yet, but I think we have a couple more retirees coming up in the cable department, and that's a conversation we need to have another day.
Well, I guess to look forward to hiring people that have this background would maybe be good.
I was wanting to gauge just the appetite the board has for this type of project. I don't know if we've said enough to give us direction. We can start putting together an RFP for design, or if the board's comfortable with going with the firm, this known quantity and engineering associates we've already dealt with. Depends on how fast you all would like to move. I know we've had the report for 6-7 months, but we'd be happy. Just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, my general thought is I just like to get the questions answered we have, and I don't see any reason not to keep moving, but pending having some sense of where we're going to go, what those costs are. And
We kind of hold off on the idea of picking the firm just yet. Let's just see.
I think so, but I don't know if it's...
Answer some questions. Okay. Well, we'll answer the questions on specifically where we're looking to go and why and costs, and then go from there. So I think that's, for me, I think that's all I have. I appreciate it.
Well, I think that would be a good thing to start into, and that we can do it as cover the costs as we go, ideally, but maybe there are benefits to doing even more.
Yeah, we've got we have $100,000 budgeted this year, which we thought would go towards design, and then we have a $1.5 million budgeted for the next 4 years. And in 2022, we pay off our primary loan for the HFC network, and that could push us close to $5 million a year cash investment back into the system at that time. So that we could really start moving pretty fast.
So the $100,000 we have for this year, have we spent any of it?
No, ma'am.
Oh,
Kind of what we're looking at.
Okay.
We can go ahead and get designed. So I just want to throw out the numbers and these are based on no increase in broadband rates over the next 5 years is the way we've got it set up today. So this is just cash we're generating that we were reinvest as we produce. So thank you very much.
Well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.